Alright, welcome back everybody. We're going to continue reading from the book Proofs of a Conspiracy Against All the Religions and Governments of Europe, carried on in secret meetings of Freemasons, Illuminati, and reading societies. It was written in 1798 by John Robison. So where we left off last time, the author was telling us what a newly initiated member of the order is expected to do. And the author is getting his source material from court proceedings in Bavaria dating from the second half of the 1700s. And in these court proceedings, we learn from the words of Adam Weishaupt about what the initiate goes through. Some of those things were the initiate has a sponsor, a one-on-one relationship. They are, secretly invited into the group, and they are expected to essentially spy on everybody in their community and to take note, both physical and mental, of the character of their neighbors. And they are meant to take all of this to their superiors so that their superiors can better get a grasp of what they need to do to continue the great work. And we learn that these members of the order, the Illuminati, are all high-ranking Masons, and they are placed in the perfect position for their personality. So, the CEO of corporations, the postmaster of the post office, the head of the bank, head of the police station, all of these roles in society are filled by these high-ranking Masons and Illuminati members who are selected in secret. So we learn about the initiates, first trials. And another thing is the initiate needed to basically admit every insecurity and embarrassing moment that they could think of. And obviously this is used as blackmail by the superiors to keep the initiate from opening their mouth. And this is essentially what happens in all levels of Freemasonry. They try to get your borders down. They want you to feel secure. And then you eventually admit one too many things so that they can hold it against you and you will maintain your secrecy. So let's continue. These characteristic anecdotes are not for the instruction of the superiors, who are men of long experience and familiar with such occupation, but they inform the order concerning the talents and proficiency of the young member. Scientific instruction, being connected by system, is soon communicated and may in general be very completely obtained from the books which are recommended to the novice, and acquired in the public seminaries of instruction. But knowledge of character is more multifarious and more delicate. For this there is no college, and it must therefore require longer time for its attainment. Besides, this assiduous and long-continued study of men enables the possessor of such knowledge to act with men, and by his knowledge of their character, to influence their conduct. That's a really important line. So the whole point of this order, the whole point of high-ranking Freemasonry in general, is to study man, to study and obtain knowledge of his character, for the sole purpose of influencing their conduct, right? These are in the words of Weishaupt himself, basically. For such reasons, this study is continued and these rescripts are required. During the whole progress through the order, and attention to them is recommended as the only mean of advancement. Remarks on physiognomy in these narrations are accounted of considerable value. During all this trial, which may last 1, 2, or 3 years, the novice knows no person of the order but his own instructor, with whom he has frequent meetings, along with other Minervals. In these conversations he learns the importance of the order, and the opportunities he will afterwards have of acquiring much hidden science. The employment of his unknown superiors naturally causes him to entertain very high notions of their abilities and worth. So what they're saying is basically the superiors are deified, and they remain in the shadows, they remain in secret, and that's how the entire world of Freemasonry works. It works through secrets, and it works through mystery, and, who doesn't want to solve a mystery? It's all about playing with the curiosity of these men. Continuing, he is counseled to aim at a resemblance to them by getting rid by degrees of all those prejudices and prepossessions which checked his own former progress, and he is assisted with this endeavor by an invitation to a correspondence with them. He may address the provincial superior by directing his letter, SOLI, or to the general by heading his letter Primo, Primo, or the superiors in general by the Latin phrase quibus licet. In these letters he may mention whatever he thinks conducive to the advancement of the order. He may inform the superiors how his instructor behaves to him, if assiduous or remiss, indulgent or severe. The superiors are enjoined by the strongest motives to convey these letters wherever addressed. None but the general and council know the result of all this, and all are enjoined to keep themselves in their proceedings unknown to all the world. If 3 years of this novitiate have elapsed without further notice, the Minerval must look for no further advancement. He is found unfit, and remains a Freemason of the highest class. This is called sta bene. But should his superiors judge more favorably of him, he is drawn out of the general mass of Freemasons, and becomes Illuminatus minor. When called to a conference for this purpose, he is told in the most serious manner that, quote, it is vain for him to hope to acquire wisdom by mere systematic instruction. For such instruction the superiors have no leisure. Their duty is not to form speculators, but active men, whom they must immediately employ in the service of the order. He must therefore grow wise and able entirely by the unfolding and exertion of his own talents. His superiors have already discovered what these are, and know what service he may be capable of rendering the order, provided he now heartily acquiesces in being thus honorably employed. They will assist him in bringing his talents into action, and will place him in the situations most favorable for their exertion, so that he may be assured of success. Hitherto he has been a mere scholar, but his first step farther carries him into action. He must therefore now consider himself as an instrument in the hands of his superiors, to be used for the noblest purposes, end quote. That really sums it up. Once someone reaches the upper levels of Freemasonry, it is no longer about the mysteries, it's no longer about religion, it's no longer about, brotherhood, it's about action. And it's about being put in the spot you will perform best in. And this action they're speaking of is the plan of Lucifer. It's Satan's plan for the world, which, we are living at the climax of today. So at the point of illumination, these people are wholeheartedly 100% satanic, one world order individuals. They wouldn't make it this far if they weren't, right? And then they just put it in this wording to make it sound beneficial and positive to society. Let's continue. The aim of the order is now more fully told him. It is, in one sentence, quote, to make of the human race, without any distinction of nation, condition, or profession, one good and happy family, end quote. To this aim, demonstrably attainable, every smaller consideration must give way. This may sometimes require sacrifices which no man standing alone has fortitude to make, but which become light, and a source of the purest enjoyment when supported and encouraged by the countenance and cooperation of the united wise and good, such as are the superiors of the order. If the candidate, warmed by the alluring picture of the possible happiness of a virtuous society, says that he is sensible of the propriety of this procedure, and still wishes to be of the order, he is required to sign the following obligation. Quote, I, name, protest before you the worthy plenipotentiary of the venerable order into which I wish to be admitted, that I acknowledge my natural weakness and inability, and that I, with all my possessions, rank, honors, and titles, which I hold in political society, am, at bottom, only a man. I can enjoy these things only through my fellow men, and through them also I may lose them. The approbation and consideration of my fellow men are indispensably necessary, and I must try to maintain them by all my talents. These I will never use to the prejudice of universal good, but will oppose, with all my might, the enemies of the human race and of political society. I will embrace every opportunity of saving mankind by improving my understanding and my affections, and by imparting all important knowledge, as the good and statutes of this order require of me. I bind myself to perpetual silence and unshaken loyalty and submission to the order. Let's read that one more time. I bind myself to perpetual silence and unshaken loyalty and submission to the order. So if you're wondering how this evil could exist, how people could do the things they're doing today and still live with themselves, well, once you're in too deep, you're in deep, right? These aren't just words to these people. So if you take an oath saying that you will forever submit yourself to the order, you're going to forever submit yourself. It's better than the consequences once you've gone that far down the road. Continuing. Submission to the order in the persons of my superiors. Here, making a faithful and complete surrender of my private judgment, my own will, and every narrow-minded employment of my power and influence. I pledge myself to account the good of the order as my own, and am ready to serve it with my fortune, my honor, and my blood. Should I, through omission, neglect, passion, or wickedness, behave contrary to this good of the order, I subject myself to what reproof or punishment my superiors shall enjoin. The friends and enemies of the order shall be my friends and enemies, and with respect to both I will conduct myself as directed by the order, and am ready, in every lawful way, to devote myself to its increase and promotion, and therein to employ all my ability. All this I promise and protest, without secret reservation, according to the intention of the society which require from me this engagement. This I do as I am, and as I hope to continue, a man of honor." End quote. So that's a pretty long obligation, and we just read a part that talks about the superiors choosing reproof and punishment for anybody who breaks this obligation. And that's exactly what would happen 40 or 50 years after this to a man named William Morgan. So in the 1820s, William Morgan exposed Freemasonry for being Baphomet Satan worship, and he was murdered by the Masons. And this is actually what sparked the first third party in America, which was the anti-Masonic Republican Party, headed by John Adams and a couple other of his colleagues. So this is real. Like, when this obligation is broken, people do die, and people's loved ones die as well. So that's why we see these things happening today, right? They're dead serious about all this. Continuing. A drawn sword is then pointed at his breast, and he is asked, "Will you be obedient to the commands of your superiors?" He is threatened with unavoidable vengeance, from which no potentate can defend him, if he should ever betray the order. He is then asked, 1. What aim does he wish the order to have? 2. What means he would choose to advance this aim? 3. Whom he wishes to keep out of the order? And 4. What subjects he wishes not to be discussed in it. Our candidate is now Illuminatus Minor. It is needless to narrate the mummery of reception, and it is enough to say that it nearly resembles that of the Masonic Chevalier de Soleil, known to everyone much conversant in Masonry. Weishaupt's preparatory discourse of reception is a piece of good composition, whether considered as argumentative from topics indeed that are very gratuitous and fanciful, or as a specimen of that declamation which was so much practiced by Libanius and other sophists, and it gives a distinct and captivating account of the professed aim of the order. The Illuminatus Minor learns a good deal more of the order, but by very sparing morsels, under the same instructor. The task has now become more delicate and difficult. The chief part of it is the rooting out of prejudices in politics and religion, and Weishaupt has shown much address in the method which he has employed. Not the most hurtful, but the most easily refuted, were the first subjects of discussion, so that the pupil gets into the habits of victory, and his reverence for the systems of either kind is diminished when they are found to have harbored such untenable opinions. The proceedings in the eclectic lodges of Masonry and the harangues of the brother orators teemed with the boldest sentiments both in politics and religion. Enlightening, in the triumph of reason, had been the ton of the country for some time past, and every institution, civil and religious, had been the subject of the most free criticism. Above all, the cosmopolitanism, which had been imported from France, where it had been the favorite topic of the enthusiastical economist, was now become a general theme of discussion in all societies of cultivated men. It was a subject of easy and agreeable declamation, and the literati found in it a subject admirably fitted for showing their talents, and ingratiating themselves with the young men of fortune, whose minds, unsuspicious as yet and generous, were fired with the fair prospects set before them of universal and attainable happiness. And the pupils of the Illuminati were still more warmed by the thought that they were to be the happy instruments of accomplishing all this. And though the doctrines of universal liberty and equality, as imprescriptible rights of man, might sometimes startle those who possess the advantage of fortune. There were thousands of younger sons and of men of talents without fortune, to whom these were agreeable sounds, and we must particularly observe that those who were now the pupils were a set of picked subjects, whose characters and peculiar biases were well known by their conduct during their novitiate as Minervals. They were therefore such as, in all probability, would not boggle at very free sentiments. We might rather expect a partiality to doctrines which removed some restraints which formerly checked them in the indulgence of youthful passions. Their instructors, who have thus relieved their minds from several anxious thoughts, must appear men of superior minds. This was a notion most carefully inculcated, and they could see nothing to contradict it. For except their own mentor, they knew none. They heard of superiors of different ranks, but never saw them, and the same mode of instruction that was practiced during their novitiate was still retained. More particulars of the order were slowly unfolded to them, and they were taught that their superiors were men of distinguished talents, and were superiors for this reason alone. They were taught that the great opportunities which his superiors had for observation, and their habits of continually occupying their thoughts with the great objects of this order, had enlarged their views even far beyond the narrow limits of nations and kingdoms, which they hoped would one day coalesce into one great society. Let me reread that last sentence. Enlarge their views even far beyond the narrow limits of nations and kingdoms, which they hoped would one day coalesce into one great society. We're living in that coalescing, where consideration would attach to talents and worth alone, and that preeminence in these would be invariably attended with all the enjoyments of influence and power. And they were told that they would gradually become acquainted with these great and venerable characters, as they advanced in the order. In earnest of this, they were made acquainted with one or two superiors, and with several Illuminati of their own rank. Also, to whet their zeal, they are now made instructors of one or two Minervals, and report their progress to their superiors. They are given to understand that nothing can so much recommend them as the success with which they perform the task. Basically saying, to move up, you need to pass the brainwashing on, right? Nobody ever stops to question any of it, because they're all caught up in the glory, the triumph, and the deification of these superiors. It is declared to be the best evidence of their usefulness in the great designs of the order. So whoever is the best yes man, basically, is who they want in the order. The baleful effects of general superstition, and even of any peculiar religious prepossession, are now strongly inculcated, and the discernment of the pupils in these matters is learned by questions which are given them from time to discuss. These are managed with delicacy and circumspection, that the timid may not be alarmed. In like manner, the political doctrines of the order are inculcated with the utmost caution. After the mind of the pupil has been warmed by the pictures of universal happiness, and convinced that it is a possible thing to unite all the inhabitants of the earth in one great society, and after it has been made out, in some measure to the satisfaction of the pupil, that a great addition of happiness is gained by the abolition of national distinctions and animosities. Wow. That's exactly what they do today. Groups like the World Economic Forum. It's a very slow process, and it's a very fragile, careful process to brainwash people into believing that there could possibly be one society on Earth. You know what I mean? It is very slow. It is very subtle. It has to do with all aspects of life, from the newspaper articles we read to the race of characters on television and in commercials. Every little part of society is geared towards slowly getting us to accept a one-world society. It may frequently be no hard task to make him think that patriotism is a narrow-minded, monopolizing sentiment, and even incompatible with the more enlarged views of the order, namely, the uniting the whole human race into one great and happy society. Princes are a chief feature of national distinction. Princes, therefore, may now be safely represented as unnecessary. If so, loyalty to princes loses much of its sacred character, and the so frequent enforcing of it in our common political discussions may now be easily made to appear a selfish maxim of rulers, by which they may more easily enslave the people, and thus it may at last appear that religion, the love of our particular country, and loyalty to our prince should be resisted. Let's say that one more time, that religion should be resisted. If by these partial or narrow views we prevent the accomplishment of that cosmopolitical happiness which is continually held forth as the great object of the order, it is in this point of view that the terms of devotion to the order which are inserted in the oath of admission are now explained. Remember, guys, the languages were confounded by God after the incident at Babel, right? In Babylon, the Tower of Babel. So this is directly going against the word of our Lord, the word of God, of Jesus Christ, right? Continuing. The authority of the ruling powers is therefore represented as of inferior moral weight to that of the order. These powers are despots when they do not conduct themselves by its principles, and it is therefore our duty to surround them with its members, so that the profane may have no access to them. Sound like what's going on today, right? The Masons have agents all over the country in every town, every lodge, performing the great work, which is the C-19 One World Order, giant mass deception we're living through today. Thus we are able most powerfully to promote its interest. If any person is more disposed to listen to princes than to the order, he is not fit for it, and must rise no higher. We must do our utmost to procure the advancement of Illuminati into all important civil offices, end quote. Your town selectmen. Doesn't matter how many people are in your town. I live in a tiny, tiny town, well under 1,000 people, and they're here. There's a Masonic hall. There are Masons having pancake breakfasts down the road every once in a while. They're in every town in our country, and they worship Satan, whether they know it or not. They're carrying forth Lucifer's plan. Accordingly, the order labored in this with great zeal and success. A correspondence was discovered, in which it is plain that by their influence one of the greatest ecclesiastical dignities was filled up in opposition to the right and authority of the Archbishop of Spire, who was there represented as a tyrannical and bigoted priest. They contrived to place their members as tutors to the youth of distinction. One of them, Baron Luchtenring, took the charge of a young prince without any salary. They insinuated themselves into all public offices, and particularly into courts of justice. In like manner, the chairs in the University of Ingolstadt were, with only 2 exceptions, occupied by the Illuminati. Quote, rulers who are members must be promoted through the ranks of the order only in proportion as they acknowledge the goodness of its great object. Basically, only promote people higher into the order if they're okay with the satanic agenda, right? Lay it on them lightly and slowly. Its object may be said to be the checking of the tyranny of princes, nobles, and priests, and establishing a universal equality of condition and of religion. The pupil is now informed that such a religion is contained in the order, is the perfection of Christianity, and will be imparted to him in due time. So these people think they can perfect something, perfect a religion, acting outside of that religion. But you see, they use Christianity to fool people into joining. Have you seen that video of the Shriner as he's entering the big Shriner Expo, and that guy with the camera stops him, and basically the Shriner ends up admitting that he is Lucifer. And he thinks that to be Lucifer is to be holy, to be just, to be good, to be all these different, descriptive words. And he has no clue the actual truth of who Lucifer is, and the guy with the camera gives it to him. I'm sure you've seen that video. It's an old one. But that's an example. These people are tricked into attaining the higher degrees by thinking it's Christianity. They are slowly indoctrinated into the truth that it's Satanism, very, very slowly. And it's slow so that they can pick out only the people they know will continue with the great work. So someone who's actually a Christian in Freemasonry will never make it to that higher level. These and other principles and maxims of the order are partly communicated by the verbal instruction of the mentor, partly by writings, which must be punctually returned, and partly read by the pupil at the mentor's house, but without taking extracts. In such portions as he shall direct, the rescripts by the pupil must contain discussions on these subjects, and of anecdotes and descriptions of living characters, and these must be zealously continued as the chief mean of advancement. Like I said when we started, spying on people. That's the chief mean of advancement, is basically pretend you're in the military behind enemy lines, and you need to keep tabs and spy on every single person around you and report it to your mentor. That's exactly what this is. All this while the pupil knows only his mentor, the Minervals, and a few others of his own rank. All mention of degrees or other business of the order must be carefully avoided, even in the meetings with other members. Quote, "For the order wishes to be secret, and to work in silence, for thus it is better secured from the oppression of the ruling powers, and because this secrecy gives a greater zest to the whole." End quote. This short account of the novitiate and of the lowest class of Illuminati is all we can get from the authority of Mr. Weishaupt. The higher degrees were not published by him. Many circumstances appear suspicious, and are certainly susceptible of different turns, and may easily be pushed to very dangerous extremes. The accounts given by the 4 professors confirm these suspicions. They declare upon oath that they make all of these accusations in consequence of what they heard in the meetings, and of what they knew of the higher orders. But since the time of the suppression by the elector, discoveries have been made which throw great light on the subject. A collection of original papers and correspondence was found by searching the house of one Zwack, Z-W-A-C-K, that's a last name, who was a member of the Illuminati in 1786. The following year, a much larger collection was found at the house of Baron Bassus, and since that time, Baron Neig, the most active member next to Weishaupt, published an account of some of the higher degrees, which had been formed by himself. A long while after this were published Neueste Arbeitung des Spartacus und Philo in der Illuminaten Orden, and Hohera Granden des Illuminaten Ordens. These 2 works give an account of the whole secret constitution of the order, its various degrees, the manner of conferring them, the instructions to the entrants, and an explanation of the connection of the order with Freemasonry, and a critical history. We shall give some extracts from such these as they have been published. Weishaupt was the founder in 1776. In 1778, the number of members was considerably increased, and the order was fully established. The members took antique names. Thus, Weishaupt took the name of Spartacus. It's about to list off a bunch of names. Just remember, Weishaupt is Spartacus. Spartacus was the man who headed the insurrection of slaves, which in Pompey's time kept Rome in terror and uproar for 3 years. Zwack was called Cato. Neig was called Philo. Bassus was Hannibal. Hertel was Marius. Marquis Constanza was Diomedes. Nicolai, an eminent and learned bookseller in Berlin and author of several works of reputation, took the name of Lucian, the great scoffer at all religion. Another was Mahomet. Think of those words. Lucian, like Lucifer. Mahomet, like Baphomet. And it says right here that Lucian was the great scoffer at all religion. It is remarkable that except Cato and Socrates, we have not a name of any ancient who was eminent as a teacher and practicer of virtue. On the contrary, they seem to have affected the characters of the free thinkers and turbulent spirits of antiquity. In the same manner, they gave ancient names to the cities and countries of Europe. Munich was Athens, Vienna was Rome. So what the author says there is that all these names that they pick, they aren't names of virtuous, honorable people in history. They're names of those who caused chaos. Order out of chaos, just like the Freemason Supreme Council slogan says, ordo ab chao. That's the whole entire point of the Illuminati. Order out of chaos. So we're going to read one of these letters from Weishaupt to Cato from February 6, 1778. Mon but est de faire valoir la raison. As a subordinate object, I shall endeavor to gain security to ourselves, a backing in case of misfortunes. Remember, this is Weishaupt's words. And assistance from without. I shall therefore press the cultivation of science, especially such sciences as may have an influence on our reception in the world, and may serve to remove obstacles out of the way. Those sciences would be the study of men, right? Psychology, programming people, MK Ultra comes to mind. We have to struggle with pedantry, with intolerance, with divines and statesmen, and above all, princes and priests are in our way. Men are unfit as they are, and must be formed. Each class must be the school of trial for the next. This will be tedious, because it is hazardous, In the last classes, I propose academies under the direction of the order. This will secure us the adherence of the literae. That's colleges today. That's exactly what he's talking about. And that's the world we live in today. Science shall here be the lure. Unbelievable. This is the world we live in. Only those who are assuredly proper subjects shall be picked out from among the inferior classes for the higher mysteries, which contain the first principles and means of promoting a happy life. No religionist must, on any account, be admitted into these, for here we work at the discovery and extirpation of superstition and prejudices. The instructions shall be so conducted that each shall disclose what he thinks he conceals within his own breast, what are his ruling propensities and passions, and how far he has advanced in the command of himself. This will answer all the purposes of auricular confession, and in particular every person shall be made a spy on another and on all around him. Nothing can escape our sight. By these means we shall readily discover who are contended, and receive with relish the peculiar state doctrines and religious opinions that are laid before them, and, at last, the trustworthy alone will be admitted to a participation of the whole maxims and political constitution of the order. In a council composed of such members we shall labor at the contrivance of means to drive by degrees the enemies of reason and of humanity out of the world, and to establish a peculiar morality and religion fitted for the great society of mankind. So, Christians, what he's saying is Christians will be driven out of the world. But this is a ticklish project and requires the utmost circumspection. The squeamish will start at the sight of religious or political novelties, and they must be prepared for them. We must be particularly careful about the books which we recommend. I shall confine them at first to moralists and reasoning historians. This will prepare for a patient reception in the higher classes of works of a bolder flight, such as Robinet's System of Nature, Political Nature, Philosophy of Nature, Social Systems. The writings of Murabad and Helvetius is fit only for the strongest stomachs. If any one has a copy already, neither praise nor find fault with him. Say nothing on such subjects to entrance, for we don't know how they will be received. Folks are not yet prepared. Marius, an excellent man, must be dealt with. His stomach, which cannot yet digest such strong food, must acquire a better tone. The allegory on which I am to found the mysteries of the higher orders is the fire worship of the Magi. We must have some worship, and none is so apposite. Let there be light, and there shall be light. This is my motto, and is my fundamental principle. Well, who's going to bring the light? Lucifer, the light bearer, of course. The degrees will be Führerorden, Parsenorden, all very practicable. In the course through these there will be no stay bene. This is the answer given to one who solicits preferment and is refused. Remember, sta bene or stay bene is when they're refused into the order of Illuminati. For I engage that none shall enter this class who has not laid aside his prejudices. No man is fit for our order who is not a Brutus or a Catiline, and is not ready to go to every length. Tell me how you like this. Spartacus to Cato, March 1778. To collect unpublished works and information from the archives of states will be a most useful service. We shall be able to show in a very ridiculous light the claims of our despots. Marius, keeper of the archives of the electorate, has ferreted out a noble document which we have got. He makes it, forsooth, a case of conscience. How silly that, since only that is sin, which is ultimately productive of mischief. In this case, where the advantage far exceeds the hurt, it is meritorious virtue. It will do more good in our hands than by remaining for 1,000 years on the dusty shelf. There was found in the handwriting of Zwack a project for a sisterhood, in subserviency to the designs of the Illuminati. In it are the following passages. Yeah, don't forget, just like the Masons have the Eastern Star for women, there's always an additional group for women, right? It will be of great service and procure us both much information and money, and will suit charmingly the taste of many of our truest members who are lovers of the sex. It should consist of two classes, the virtuous and the freer-hearted, i.e., those who fly out of the common tract of prudish manners. So basically bohemians, right? They must not know of each other, and must be under the direction of men, but without knowing it. Proper books must be put into their hands, and such, but secretly, as are flattering to their passions. This is old school MK Ultra, you guys. This is old school programming like we're living with today. There are, in the same handwriting, description of a strong box, which, if forced open, shall blow up and destroy its contents. Several receipts for procuring abortion, a composition which blinds or kills when spurted in the face, a sheet containing a receipt for sympathetic ink, tea for procuring abortion, a method for filling a bedchamber with pestilential vapors, how to take off impressions of seals, so as to use them afterwards as seals. You know, you would do that, unseal a letter, take the letter out and read it, and then reseal it. A collection of some hundreds of such impressions with a list of their owners, princes, nobles, clergymen, merchants. They're talking about murder, they're talking about abortion, they're talking about forging documents from princes, noblemen, clergy. Crazy. A manuscript entitled Better Than Horace. It was afterwards printed and distributed at Leipzig Fair, and is an attack and bitter satire on all religion. This is in the handwriting of Ajax, as also a dissertation on suicide. His sister-in-law threw herself from the top of a tower. There was also a set of portraits or characters of 85 ladies in Munich, with recommendations of some of them for members of a lodge of Sister Illuminati. Also injunctions to all the superiors to learn to write with both hands, and that they should use more than one cipher. So this is basically describing a box that belongs to a member of the Illuminati. And it, like I said, it has tools for abortion. It has writings against religion. It has forgery material. It has ciphers for writing secret messages. Continuing. Immediately after the publication of these writings, many defenses appeared. Oh yeah, and the box explodes if it's forced open. It was said that the dreadful medical apparatus were with propriety in the hands of Councillor Zwack, who was a judge of a criminal court, and whose duty it was therefore to know such things. The same excuse was offered for the collection of seals. So we're talking about a judge. Have you ever been to court? I've been to court. Can you imagine the judge being like this? Because they are. They all are. You don't become a judge unless you're a high mason, all right? Satanic. The same excuse was offered for the collection of seals. But how came these things to be put up with papers of the Illuminati and to be in the handwriting of one of that order? Weishaupt says, quote, these things were not carried into effect, only spoken of, and are justifiable when taken in proper connection, end quote. This, however, he has not pointed out, but he appeals to the account of the order, which he had published at Regensburg, and in which neither these things are to be found, nor any possibility of a connection by which they may be justified. Quote, all men, says he, are subject to errors, and the best man is he who best conceals them. I have never been guilty of any such vices or follies. For proof, I appeal to the whole tenor of my life, which my reputation and my struggles with hostile cabals had brought completely into public view long before the institution of this order, without abating anything of that flattering regard which was paid to me by the first persons of my country and its neighborhood, a regard well evinced by their confidence in me as the best instructor of their children, end quote. Wow, that reminds me of today, how these people somehow have the nerve to get up on stage, these politicians and these celebrities, and tell us that we're all in danger and that we all need to get the magic potion. They have no shame. You can prove them to be satanic and evil over and over and over and over again. They have no shame. They will never break their character because they truly believe their reputation is who they are. In some of his private letters, we learn the means which he employed to acquire this influence among the youth, and they are such as could not fail. But we must not anticipate, quote, it is well known that I have made the chair which I occupied in the University of Ingolstadt the resort of the first class of the German youth, whereas formerly it had only brought round it the low-born practitioners in the courts of law. I have gone through the whole circle of human inquiry. I have exorcised spirits, raised ghosts, discovered treasures, interrogated the Kabbalah. I have never transmuted metals. a very pretty and respectable circle indeed, and what vulgar spirits would scarcely have included within the pale of their curiosity. Quote, "The tenor of my life has been the opposite of everything that is vile, and no man can lay any such thing to my charge. I have reason to rejoice that these writings have appeared. They are a vindication of the order and of my conduct. I can and must declare to God, and I do it now in the most solemn manner, that in my whole life I never saw or heard of the so much condemned secret writings, and in particular respecting these abominable means, such as poisoning, abortion, etc., was it ever known to me in any case, that any of my friends or acquaintances ever even thought of them, advised them, or made any use of them. I was indeed always a schemer and projector, but never could engage much in detail." These people are amazing liars. "My general plan is good, though in the detail there may be faults. I had myself to form in another situation, and in an active station in life, I should have been keenly occupied, and the founding in order would never have come into my head. But I would have executed much greater things, had not government always opposed my exertions, and placed others in the situations which suited my talents. It was the full conviction of this, and of what could be done if every man were placed in the office for which he was fitted by nature and a proper education." That sounds very Orwellian, right? A perfect job and perfect role for everybody. Yeah. "Which first suggested to me the plan of illumination. Surely Mr. Weishaupt had a very serious charge, the education of youth, and his encouragement in that charge was the most flattering that an Illuminatus could wish for, because he had brought round him the youth, whose influence in society was the greatest, and who would most of all contribute to the diffusing good principles and exciting to good conduct through the whole state." Sounds a lot like today, right? The youth is the backbone of the New World Order's power. They get them through Hollywood, they get them through music. You know, it's not the older people. The older people know the truth. They know what's going on. They know the earth is flat. It's the young people who bring about the agenda of the Illuminati. "I did not," says he, "bring deism into Bavaria more than into Rome. I found it here, in great vigor, more abounding than in any of the neighboring Protestant states. I am proud to be known to the world as the founder of the Order of the Illuminati, and I repeat my wish to have for my epitaph, Hic situs est phaenon curus ariga paterni, quem si non tenuit magnus tamen excidit assis," which I believe means the second discovery. No, that can't be what it means. You'd have to punch that into a Latin translator. "The second discovery of secret correspondence at Sandersorf, the featuring of Baron Batz, who is called Hannibal, contains still more interesting facts." Once again, Spartacus to Cato, so Adam Weishaupt to one of the members of the Illuminati, writes, "What shall I do? I am deprived of all help. Socrates, who would insist on being a man of consequence among us, and is really a man of talents and of the right way of thinking, is eternally besotted. Augustus is in the worst estimation imaginable. Alcibiades sits the day long with the Venter's pretty wife, and there he sighs and pines. A few days ago at Corinth, Tiberius attempted to ravish the wife of Democedes, and her husband came in upon them. Good heavens, what Areopagite I have got. When the worthy man, Marcus Aurelius, comes to Athens, remember, Athens is Munich, they're speaking in code with ancient names, what will he think? What a meeting with dissolute immoral wretches, whoremasters, liars, bankrupts, braggarts, and vain fools. When he sees all this, what will he think? He will be ashamed to enter into an association. Observe, reader, that Spartacus writes this in August 1783, in the very time that he was trying to murder Cato's sister. End note. Where the chiefs raise the highest expectations and exhibit such a wretched example, and all this from self-will, from sensuality, am I not in the right that this man, that any such worthy man, whose name alone would give us the selection of all Germany, will declare that the whole province of Gretka, or Bavaria, innocent and guilty, must be excluded? I tell you, we may study, and write, and toil till death. We may sacrifice to the order our health, our fortune, and our reputation. And these lords, following their own pleasures, will whore, cheat, steal, and drive on like shameless rascals, and yet must be eropagati, and interfere in everything. Indeed, my dearest friend, we have only enslaved ourselves. Very oddly worded, but it sounds like these two Illuminati members, Weishaupt included, are talking about the shortcomings of their other Illuminati colleagues, I think. It was written very oddly. In another part of this fine correspondence, Diomedes has had the good fortune to intercept a QL quibus licit, in which it is said, and supported by proofs, that Cato had received 250 florins as a bribe for his sentence in his capacity as a judge in a criminal court. Remember, the QL quibus licit is a letter written by a lower member of the Illuminati to a superior. They would write the quibus licit at the top, and that's how they knew it would be delivered to a superior. So they're saying there's evidence of bribery in a criminal court in one of these letters they found. So yeah, 250 florins as a bribe for his sentence in his capacity as a judge in a criminal court. The end had surely sanctified the means. In another, a Minerval complains of his mentor for having by lies occasioned the dismission of a physician from a family, by which he obtained the custom of the house and free access, which favor he repaid by debauching the wife, and he prays to be informed whether he may not get another mentor, saying that, although that man had always given him the most excellent instructions, and he doubted not would continue them, yet he felt a disgust at the hypocrisy, which would certainly diminish the impression of the most salutary truths. It is not distressing to think that this promising youth will by and by laugh at his former simplicity and follow the steps and not the instructions of his physician. In another place, Spartacus, or Weishaupt, writes to Marius in confidence that another worthy brother, an Aripagit, had stolen a gold and a silver watch and a ring from Brutus, and begs Marius in another letter to try, while it was yet possible, to get the things restored, because the culprit was a most excellent... what a cliffhanger once again, you guys. So, I mean, in these three letters that were discovered to be, true, used in court, these are correspondences between Weishaupt, the founder of the Illuminati, and his colleagues. You can see they're talking about cheating on people's wives. They're talking about bribing judges. They're talking about stealing people's goods. They're, discussing their colleagues and the people around them and basically making fun of them. And they're basically like the guys holding the puppet strings. That's exactly what the topic is. They're talking about who's best for what, who we can put there to put the great work forward, etc. Pretty shocking. So I hope you enjoy that. I'll be back with part 3 soon enough. Bless you all in Jesus' name. Have a good night.